Good day, all kings, all queens, all gods, all goddesses, all beautiful people. I am B Floss the God, and I just want to share with you today my experience using the Neville'S teachings, living in the end, and how I manifested a check I was told I was not entitled to. Alright? Now, in 2018, November, I started working for Neville'S family's company here in Barbados, right? From November 2018 until April 2019 when the contract was up because it was a 6-month contract, all right? It was just temporary at the time until further notice. So usually when you start working for a company, right? And you work 3 months or more within the same year, you are entitled to unemployment benefits, all right? But because it started November 2018, right, which was only 2 months, November, December, that's only 2 months within that year, I was not entitled to any unemployment benefits the next year. Okay? So yeah, and I had found out about Neville in 2019, actually. The beginning of 2019 was when he was actually like taking his teaching seriously, and actually applying them because I had came across him a couple years before, around 2014, 2013, when I first heard about the secret, right? But at that time, I was so deep into the secret at that time, right? Like, just hearing about the imagination and stuff, like, I wasn't really interested at that time because, we came up with this thing about our imagination and, it's hocus pocus, and a bunch of nonsense, right? So at that time, I wasn't taking it serious. But 2019 was when I actually came across Neville Goddard again, and this time he was actually taking it serious, right? And applying the principles, right? And because before that, I was into the visualizations and the affirmations and what's not. But I still felt like something was missing, and the way how Neville Goddard explained everything for those of you, who listen to his teachings and what's not, he comes with such realness, all right? And he breaks it down so simple and makes it so easy and much more easier than like some of these spiritual teachers who be carrying you all around the world and take you around in circles, and still have you questioning yourself. Neville just came up front and gave you everything straight up front. Right, so yeah, now since I was working there from 2018, the previous year, from November, only 2 months, I was not entitled to no unemployment benefits. All right, so when my time was up now in April 2019, those of us who've been working for those 6 months, we all still receive our green papers and what's not. So we took them in to the place where you would get stamps and whatever, because the job is over, the time period is over, so you still take it in to the company where you will get the stuff, the stamps, in order for you to receive unemployment benefits if you are entitled to them. Right. So I remember the rest of the people who was working with me at that time, they took in their green papers, and they were told they were not entitled to nothing. Right. But for some reason, when they took in mine, I was getting stamps. Right. So it was like, okay, that is strange because usually usually you're supposed to be working 3 months or over, 3 months or more in order to get stamps. And the rest of my former workmates that was working the same time period as me, they didn't get any. Right? So I was like, okay, we'll still go off the floor, you know what I mean? So I was getting these stamps and what's not, and it was like a month or two passed by and I didn't see any checks coming. So I decided to call the place, right, to find out what was going on. So I explained myself like for the amount of time I was working and I was receiving stamps and what's not, and I haven't seen any checks as yet. And I remember speaking to this lady and she was like, well, I was only working for 2 months the previous year, so I was not entitled to any, right? And I understood that part, but why was I still getting the stamps then? You know what I mean? So she was just telling me, well, it was a mistake on their behalf, and they was not entitled to no checks. So I was like, damn, right? So she told me that, and I remember calling back again and asking to speak to the manager, somebody that was in charge, and they too came and told me the same thing, right? That she basically told me I am not entitled to anything, and it was a mistake on their behalf. I was like, shh. So you mean to tell me I was going on there all this time to get stamps? You know what I mean? Thinking that I'm getting a check, even though I know for a fact you're supposed to be working 3 months or more, but I still received the stamp. So I was like, okay, well, I was still entitled to something, right? So I was like, shit. And at this time now, like I was actually now listening to Neville's teachings and what's not, right? So to I decided to use the technique living in the end. You know what I mean? I was like, no, I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna see to it that I get this check. All right. So after talking to the manager, I went straight into my imaginal acts, right? And I was living in the end, seeing myself receiving the check from the postman. He actually brought the check for me, and I received it. You know what I mean? And I ended up sharing the good news with a friend, and that was my imaginal scene, right? And they did this for about a month or two. I think it was, yeah, about a month or two. I did this, right? 3 times a day. I was doing this same imaginal act. And um, I remember a couple weeks just before I received the check, a check came from my cousin, right? And it was the same type of check, right? So when the postman gave it to me that day, I remember taking the check. But when he gave me it, it was upside down. It wasn't turned up right that you could see the actual name. It was turned upside down, right? So when he brought the check, I was excited. I was like, shit, this is it. Right? So when he gave me it, and he went off, as I took it out and I turned it over, I realized the check was for my cousin. So I was like, what? This got to be a mistake. You know what I mean? But it wasn't a mistake. The check was actually for her. But that was like a sign showing me that my imaginal acts was working, because signs precede. No, sorry, signs follow. They don't precede. You know what I mean? So when you set an intention, you tend to see signs, you tend to get signs and stuff, later on. Like if you're trying to manifest a certain type of car, you will start seeing that type of car and what's not, blah blah blah, etc. Right? So yeah, so when the check came, I was like, this got to be a mistake. I remember I started to waver a bit, right? But then I told myself, no, you know what? This is a sign. Whatever it is that I'm doing, it's working. So I continued with the imaginary acts for a couple more weeks again, and this time I remember, because the same company that I was working for, they ended up calling me back because somebody had went on sick leave, right? So they ended up calling me back to ask me if I would be available, to come and work. So I was like, okay, no problem, right? And I remember that same day, the postman came and the check came, right? And when I received it, I was surprised, but yet still not surprised, because like, I set the intention. Even though I set the intention, right, it was like, you know what, fuck it, straight up, fuck it. I have nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Okay, just continue to do my imaginary acts. And if it shows up, it shows up. And the check did show up. It did come. So when I did receive that, right, that boost my self confidence. You know what I mean? To the max. I was like, shit, yeah, I could do this. You know what I mean? And and at that time too, I was imagining myself, to actually getting the job full time, right? But when I actually saw that I manifested this check, even though the managers told me that I am not entitled to this, you know what I mean? And they called on more than one occasion and told me the same thing over and over. I'm not entitled to it. Even though they said that, I still manifested it, and the check was more than I thought it would be too. The amount of money that I received, so that boosts my self confidence, and I was like, okay, I even changed my mind, because as I told you, I wanted to work there permanently. But I changed my mind and said, okay, well, if I can manifest this check, well, I can manifest millions of dollars, I can manifest doing my own stuff, working for myself and doing what I want to do, you know what I mean? So that's why it's good that you always have like a delay. It's good that you have a delay when it comes to manifesting, right? Because with that delay, you know what I mean? The universe, or your higher self, is giving you an opportunity to make sure that if you really want this, you know what I mean. So it was still good that I had that delay. It was still good that I had that delay because at the end of the day, I didn't want to work there anymore. When they saw that I received this check and it built my confidence, I was like, okay, you know what? I don't want that anymore. I'm just going to do my own thing. So since then, I've been manifesting a lot of things, small stuff. What we would call small stuff. We usually say there's no big stuff or small stuff, but you get what I mean. We manifest like free food here and there and what's not. You know what I mean? Receiving like small amounts of money here and there, but we will leave that for another video, right? But that is how I manifested the check I was told I was not entitled to using the Never Goddess technique, living in the end. So, and as Neville will always say, though it appears without, it is within. You know what I mean? An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. You know what I mean? Once you persist in it. And that is so true because they proved it. And they proved it on more than one occasion. Alright? So your imagination, that is God. That is your higher self. That is the true power. And despite what anybody might say, despite what circumstances may look like, what people might tell you, you stay focused on what it is you want. You know what I mean? It will be yours. And you persist in it, it will be yours. Doesn't matter how long it takes. Because there's no such thing as time. Alright? So with that being said, I am Be Floss to God. And that is how I manifested the check I was told I was not entitled to. And I hope this video was motivational for those of you who are listening and who are watching. And so just sending my love and peace and joy to everyone as usual. And have a blessed day. One love.